You think of yourself as a civilized eater. You have preferences, standards, things you would never put in your mouth. But your stomach tells a completely different story. The acid inside your stomach right now sits at a pH of approximately 1.5. Most plant-eating mammals have stomach acid around pH 4 or 5. Mild, gentle, designed for grass and leaves. You and the vulture are sitting together at the extreme acid end, and that is not a coincidence. Your stomach produces hydrochloric acid, one of the most corrosive substances found in any living creature. At pH 1.5, your stomach acid destroys bacteria that would be lethal to animals with milder digestive systems. The question is, why would a primate need that? To understand this, you need to go back 2.5 million years. Your earliest tool-using ancestors were not apex hunters. They were, for the most part, watching other animals do the killing. The honest archaeological record places early humans near the bottom of the scavenging hierarchy, arriving at carcasses after the big predators had finished. By the time early humans reached a carcass, the meat was largely gone. But the bones remained, and inside the bones was something extraordinarily valuable. Bone marrow is the most calorie-dense food that existed in the ancient world. Packed with fat, protein, and essential fatty acids, it was exactly the kind of concentrated nutrition that a growing primate brain required. The earliest stone tools ever found, dating back 2.5 million years, were not spear tips. They were hammerstones and flaking tools, designed specifically to crack open bones that no other animal's jaws could break. The timing aligns almost perfectly with the expansion of the human brain, and the leading hypothesis is that the fat inside those bones helped fuel it. The human brain is approximately 60% fat, and the specific fatty acids found in bone marrow are the same ones found in human brain tissue. Scientists call what early humans did kleptoscavenging, the practice of opportunistically taking food from predators that had already made the kill. Early humans could not overpower apex predators alone, but in coordinated groups, making noise and throwing objects, they could drive even lions away from fresh kills. This put early humans in exactly the same ecological niche as vultures, arriving after the kill, consuming what remained, built biologically to handle what that food actually was. And rotting meat that has been sitting in the African heat for hours or days, is full of bacteria that would be lethal to animals without extreme stomach acid. Vultures eat meat in advanced stages of decomposition and thrive on it, and the evidence suggests early humans could do something similar. Interestingly, hyenas and dogs, both well-documented scavengers and carrion eaters, have identical stomach acid levels to humans. This is convergent evolution, completely different animals independently developing the same biological solution to the same dietary challenge. Which raises an obvious question. If we were built to eat rotting meat, why does the thought of it now make us physically recoil? The answer is that disgust is a later software addition, not the original program. As humans developed cooking, agriculture, and food processing, our reliance on scavenged and rotting food declined, and the disgust response became evolutionarily useful as a contamination warning system. Early disgust was a mild caution signal, not the powerful prohibition it became once cooking gave us a better option than raw scavenged meat. The control of fire, appearing in the archaeological record somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, was the single most transformative event in the history of the human diet. Cooking heat destroys the pathogens that made raw and rotting food dangerous, and for the first time, humans had a reliable way to make meat safe without needing extreme stomach acid to do all the work. Cooking also predigests food, breaking down proteins and starches before they even enter your body, dramatically increasing the calories you can extract from the same amount of food. The Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham has argued that cooking was not just convenient, it directly enabled the dramatic brain growth that separates modern humans from all earlier hominids. Digesting raw food is enormously energy-intensive. Cooking offloads that work to the fire, freeing metabolic energy that the body could redirect toward building and running a larger brain. The physical evidence is written in our bodies. Compared to our pre-cooking ancestors, modern humans have smaller jaws, smaller teeth, shorter digestive tracts, and significantly larger brains. Our jaws have been shrinking for 2 million years, directly tracking the increasing processing of food before it enters the mouth. Our intestines are also significantly shorter than those of other great apes, because cooked, processed food requires less gut length to extract nutrition from. But even with fire, ancient humans continued eating things that would make a modern person immediately sick, and their stomach acid continued to serve a critical purpose. The ancestral menu included aged and fermented meats, raw organ meat, partially decomposed fruit, insects in various states, and foods that the modern digestive system encounters almost never. Insects were a staple, not a novelty or a dare, but a completely ordinary, reliable, nutritionally dense food source consumed by virtually every human population that ever lived. Gram for gram, many insects provide more protein than beef and contain essential fatty acids, zinc, iron, and B vitamins that the ancient body required. 2 billion people on Earth eat insects today as a normal part of their diet, and they have the longest continuous tradition of doing what your ancestors did for millions of years. The disgust response toward insects is largely a Western cultural artifact, not a universal human biological reaction. Your stomach is still perfectly capable of processing insects. The ancient hardware is intact. A single large termite mound can contain enough insects to provide 10,000 calories, a full week of food for one person with almost zero effort required to obtain it. Before cooking became reliable, and alongside it, fermentation was the other great dietary technology of the ancient world. Fermentation is essentially controlled rotting, bacteria breaking down food in ways that neutralize dangerous pathogens, reduce toxins, and dramatically increase certain nutrients. Every human culture that has ever been studied ferments something because it solved the problem of food preservation in a world without refrigeration. Archaeological evidence suggests that early humans intentionally aged and fermented meat, burying it, wrapping it in leaves, storing it in ways that allowed specific bacteria to work on it before eating. Certain fermentation processes increase the bioavailability of nutrients, making the same food more nutritious after controlled aging than it was when fresh. The ancient human relationship with food required reading the landscape at a level that modern humans have almost entirely lost. Finding food required integrating scent, vision, sound, and memory across vast landscapes, a level of environmental awareness that shaped the very architecture of the human brain. The regions of the human brain most enlarged compared to other primates are precisely the regions involved in spatial memory, social coordination, and planning, all of which evolved in service of finding and sharing food. Food sharing is one of the oldest and most distinctly human behaviors, and it almost certainly began at shared carcasses. The anthropologist Naomi Blurton-Jones has argued that large-scale food sharing, specifically sharing meat and marrow, was the foundational social technology that made human community possible. You eat at a table with other people because 2.5 million years ago, your ancestors gathered around carcasses together, and the social bonds formed around shared food became the blueprint for every human community that followed. And then, in the span of a single human lifetime relative to our entire evolutionary history, almost everything about how humans ate changed completely. 2.5 million years of eating what the landscape provided, and then 100 years of eating what a factory decided to manufacture. The stomach that evolved to handle rotting meat and bone marrow and insects and fermented food is now receiving emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners, seed oils, and refined carbohydrates that have never existed in the natural world. Ancient humans consumed hundreds of different species of food across a year. Modern processed food systems have reduced the average Western diet to approximately a dozen primary ingredients. The great irony of modern nutrition is that the stomach built to handle what would disgust us is now being challenged by what has been engineered to attract us. The vulture is still doing exactly what it was designed to do, and it is thriving. Vultures are not endangered by their own dietary choices. They are endangered by habitat loss and poisoning from human agricultural chemicals. The species that most radically departed from its evolutionary diet in the shortest period of time is now experiencing rates of chronic disease unprecedented in its history. Your stomach acid is still waiting for the food it was built to process, and what it is receiving instead is something it has no evolutionary experience with at all. In 2.5 million years, your stomach acid has barely changed, because the biology that produced it was built on a dietary logic that ran uninterrupted for millions of generations. What the evolutionary evidence of the human diet actually suggests is more interesting than any modern dietary philosophy. Diversity was the defining characteristic of the ancestral diet. Not any single food type, not any single macronutrient ratio, but extraordinary variety across hundreds of species. Some of what your ancestors ate is still available, and some of what we have decided is disgusting, our biology never agreed with. The foods your ancestors prioritized are largely the foods modern industrial diet systems have removed, discarded, or converted into premium niche products. The vulture does not have a dietary philosophy. It eats what it evolved to eat, and its body thrives on exactly that. You and the vulture share something most people would find uncomfortable to acknowledge: a stomach built for the world's most challenging foods. Your ancestors did not eat cleanly, they ate everything. Not everything in moderation, but everything available, in whatever quantities survival demanded, processed in whatever ways made it safer and more digestible. Your stomach was built for this diet. Your jaw remembers it. Your gut bacteria evolved alongside it. Your brain grew on it. And then, in the last 100 years, your body was handed a completely different set of inputs with no evolutionary track record and no time to adapt. The mismatch is not a failure of your biology. It is a failure to understand what your biology was actually built to run on. The vulture knows what it is. Do you? You are built like a scavenger, a forager, an omnivore of extraordinary range, shaped by 2.5 million years of eating everything the landscape offered. The first tools humanity ever made were built to crack bones for marrow, and that is the story the evidence tells, whatever modern dietary philosophy would prefer the answer to be. 2.5 million years ago, a small primate with unusually strong stomach acid crouched beside a picked-over carcass in the African heat. And the fat inside that bone went toward building a brain that would eventually question where it came from. The vulture did not build civilization, but it had the same stomach as the species that did.